Ladies and gentlemen, angry Americans around the country and around the globe, every episode, we have a conversation with an important, inspiring, iconic American. And I don't know if there is a more important, iconic, inspiring American than the great, fantastic, noble, wise Norman Lear. I am so honored to know him. I am privileged to have been around him for almost 2 decades now. And I am elated that on his birthday week, he can join us here on Angry Americans. Happy birthday and welcome, Norman.
Thank you so much. I had no idea I was all of that in your eyes.
Well, I'm starting our interview with a mask on because I value you so much as an American. I'm going to take it off now. I value you so much as an American, and you are such a national treasure that I want the absolute and total risk of getting you sick to be zero. Even though we are on opposite coasts, I thought it appropriate to at least encourage the use of masks around all people, but especially around a national treasure like Norman Lear.
Well, I loved it, and I think you look great in a mask. It accents your eyes, and therein lies your soul. It ain't bad.
Do you have a mask to match your trademark hat, Norman?
I do. It's something on it's downstairs on the kitchen table.
I love it because I feel like as long as I've known you, you've had a version of the hat you're wearing today that has become.
Are you asking about the hat?
I mean, both. Yes. Like I think it's a matching set now, right?
The mask is downstairs. I do have a second hat, I confess.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I am so thrilled you could join us. I want to you called me last week and said we have to talk, and I want to get to that in a second. But I am privileged to have known you since I started this work. You were one of the first really influential people who reached out to me, taught me, coached me, supported me, most of all by your example. And being around you has been a tremendous honor. And to have you on Angry Americans now at this moment in history is an even deeper honor. But I have to start by asking you what I ask everyone since the pandemic started. Where are you, Norman, and how are you? How have you been doing through all this?
I am in my home in Los Angeles. I have not ventured out in, I don't know how long, it's a couple, 3 months. I am a content and happy fellow, but terribly upset about what's going on in our country and this pandemic, and can't bear the idea that I am basically, as lovely as my home is, I'm imprisoned. And that's a terrible feeling.
Well, I know that you have made the most of that time in a feeling of prison, as you always do. You found a way to make an impact and create and fight. But I also have to ask you some of the questions I ask of all of our guests that help us get an insight into who you are. Norman Lear, what is your drink or cocktail of choice?
My cocktail of choice is the Bloody Mary. Tito's vodka is the brand I like, and V8 juice.
I love it. And why do you like that drink so much, Norman?
I like the taste of it. I like the result. I'm not anybody. I've probably been drunk 2 or 3 times in my life.
Really?
As a younger fellow. But I enjoy being a little bit high, if that's the correct word. But you know, I don't think I'd enjoy the high if I wasn't sure I have experienced it without the vodka. I mean, life is a high. So knowing that I was going to talk to you, Paul, today, that's a high. And it was a high last night as I thought about it going to bed.
I'm humbled by that. And I want you to know that in this pandemic, I got word that you do prefer Bloody Marys. Normally we would meet in person and share a drink and have this conversation, but now in pandemic, we have to do it from afar. So I made maybe the world's shittiest Bloody Mary from what I had in my kitchen. And I managed to have celery because my kids like to feed it to any animals they can find here in our undisclosed location. So I have a Bloody Mary, and I felt I must try to create one and toast you, Norman. So I'm raising a glass to you. Do you have is there a Norman Lear toast? You've experienced so much. You've been in, the halls of power around the country and around the world. Do you have a toast, a go-to toast, Norman?
You know what you have reminded me of? I can't believe it. My toast is, I toast, and then I'm thinking of what that toast is to whoever is around the table. But I say I will not speak it. But you're all covered, and I just don't speak the words, but I think them and mean them. But what you have reminded me of that I haven't thought of in 105 years is the toast my father used to make at my mother's expense. She would say, "Herman, please don't. No, I don't want that. Don't." And he would make it anyway. And his toast was, God, I've never said this publicly. His toast was, "Here's to a creature God did design. Here's to a creature God did design, blooms every month and blossoms in 9. It's the only creature this side of hell can get juice out of nuts without cracking the shell." That would embarrass my mother.
Oh,
He would do it anyway.
that is a toast that takes us through so many things, Norman. And I will raise the glass to anything, but most of all to you and to the wisdom that you share, that I know you'll share throughout this conversation. So I'm raising a glass to you. And in your soon to be 98 years, Norman.
What?
You're soon to be 98, correct?
Holy shit, I can't. Yes, soon to be 98.
Well, my Aunt Angie is 103, so she's got you by 5 years.
I love knowing that.
We celebrated her birthday a couple weeks ago. Listeners of this show know that, but I've never had anyone on the show with your length of experience. And the other question we ask of all our guests that I'm so fascinated to hear from you, Norman Lear, what was your first car?
My first what?
First car. What was your first car, Norman?
Oh, my first car. My friend Sidney Pasternak and I bought a Ford. What's that earliest of Fords? A Model T. We had a Model T Ford, for which we paid, I don't know, $39 or something, or $139, but it was very inexpensive. And I will never forget, we did this in Hartford, Connecticut, and decided we were going to drive through New England. Well, we never got further than Rhode Island or something because the car broke down too many times. But I'll never forget lying out in front of people's homes and in the grass under a tree in neighborhoods we'll never see again. Just two 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds talking about the world we lived in. I can't make that as clear as it is, or as warm and wonderful as it was, as it exists in my memory.
Thank you for sharing that. I always have a follow-up question, and I don't know if there is even a variety of answers. Usually I ask, what color was the car? Was the Model T only in one color, or did it come in multiple colors?
Gosh, I don't remember. It was as close to black as could be.
I figured they were probably all black.
As I remember it, it was black, but it was black, yeah.
Incredible. That is the best first car story we've ever had in over a year of this show. And I knew it would be fantastic. I didn't know it would be an actual Model T. That's incredible.
An actual model. Well, it was a little more available when I was a boy.
So Norman, there's a lot to get through with you, but I wanted to shift from that into the conversation you and I started a couple of days ago. You reached out to me, and you were very passionate. And every time you call, I immediately pick up the phone. My family knows to stop everything. And I was in the garage with my son, and we started to talk. And I explained later that tried to encompass your life. And I also explained to Ryder that you're the only person I know that's ever owned a copy of the Declaration of Independence. So people can understand the depth to which you are, dedicated to the understanding of what this country means. You flew 52 combat missions, in World War II. You're a decorated veteran, but you called me up and were really passionate. And I just want to basically give you the floor and say, Norman, what do you want people to know and think about right now?
We've got to see a change in the White House. That's the first thing that rushes to mind. I don't know how to describe our leader, and I haven't heard the expression in the media in a long time, but that same leader was always called, all the years I was growing up, the leader of the leader of the free world. We don't hear that expression that much, but the president of the United States was bigger than just the president. He was the leader of the free world. And I don't know how to describe who lives there now and who doesn't earn the respect that the president should earn of the American people. I don't find it pleasant talking about him. But he and what's occurring out of that office and so forth deeply concerns me. And I can't wait for the next election. And my prayer is what you would expect it to be.
Norman, you've lived almost a century now. Has America ever been in more danger than we are now? And how do you frame up this moment in comparison to other things you've lived through?
When I returned from, by the way, we dropped bombs. I got credit for 52 missions because some of them were so long that a single mission that we got credit for 2. It was in a B-17 and we dropped bombs 35 times. Actually, dropped bombs 35 times. Got credit for 52 missions. I use the larger figure because I'm an American. That's what we do. But when I came back from the service, some months after my return, or maybe as much as a year, I began to be concerned. We were the good guys, that was the war in which we were clearly, the good guys, the bad guys were very clear. And we were clearly in everybody's eyes around the world, the good guys. It's been a little muddied in wars since as to who were and whether they were good guys. I remember thinking we were the good guys and God bless America. I just so loved everything I knew about us, felt about us. But I remember thinking some months later, are we beginning to take ourselves too seriously? Are we beginning to make more of just the good guys, like suddenly we're God's chosen? And maybe the human of the species are God's chosen, or maybe it's your pet. But certainly, no country was God's chosen country. And I've seen, I think over the years we have taken ourselves too seriously and believed too much that God was on our side. or was even taking sides.
Hmm. And now, Norman, with this situation, do you feel? I don't know how you even compare it, but you were a young man in a bomber, fighting the Nazis externally. Now we're fighting forces internally. And
We were fighting those forces a long time ago.
yeah,
A long time ago. There's an organization called People for the American Way. Just got a new leader, by the way.
yeah.
Uh, 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 Ben Jealous. I can't find the words to express how grateful I am for the fact that there's a Ben Jealous in our lives now, who has replaced the glorious guy who led us through all of these years preceding. And I don't know. I think about how much we need a People for the American Way and an NAACP and the all of those organizations, because there are elements out of the right, the far right, and the religious right, that are coming alive again. And not that they've ever been gone, but alive in a kind of meteoric fashion that is scary.
I've been honored to have been as a friend for over a decade now, and I've been around your team at People for the American Way, and Michael and everyone else, and the work you do, I think has been absolutely critical. You created that organization. You've created and supported so many organizations and candidates. You've been in the fights, out in front and behind the scenes. You've hosted dinners at your home for veterans, no cameras, nobody knows, you and your family opening your doors to us, to bring veterans together, to share your stories. You called me to talk about the Russian bounty issue. Can you share your thoughts on that specifically, please, Norman?
Well, I can't believe, as we talk, and I look at you across the miles, that I'm living at a time when another country has offered money for dead Americans, a bounty on the head of dead Americans. And I don't recall hearing the inhabitant of my White House as a citizen of the United States, my president, where has he been on this issue? That another country is offering to pay money to see a dead American soldier? That I don't have the words to what that does. When I called you, I said, I'm 98 years old. This is driving me crazy. What can I do? I'll get on a plane. I'll pick it out. But I'm surprised that we've made so little of that fact. I mean, I would think that people would be in the streets, angry, protesting the White House. That it could be a matter of fact that our president doesn't seem to care, has never said a word about caring that a foreign country would pay money to see a dead American soldier.
I think it's at this moment in time, Norman, right now mothers are lining up in Portland to serve as barriers for protesters. World War II veterans like you are stepping forward. I mean, there are these maybe backstops of our democracy, the guardians of our democracy that I think transcend generation, transcend political affiliation, those voices of conscience that ring out. And that's why I wanted to get you on the show now, to hear your voice. And so that especially a younger generation that maybe isn't familiar with your work or people who, have never seen eye to eye with you politically. I think now is a time where they understand the power of your experience and your wisdom. But also, this is Angry Americans. We created this show to express the righteous anger. I say all the time, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. And that anger can be a motivator if it's turned into something positive. Then we're on the right course. If not, someone like Trump can manipulate it and turn it into the negative. But the question I ask of all our guests, and I ask of you now, Norman, is Norman Lear, what makes you angry? Other than the things we've talked about already.
What makes me angry is picking up the newspaper in the morning.
Yeah.
It's listening to the news as I go to bed at night. What makes me angry is what makes me angriest right now is a president who doesn't seem to care. Who has never spoken a word, not a word about how much he cares about the average American family. And I don't know. I find myself tongue-tied, mentally tied when I think about it, because it just doesn't seem possible, but is.
You haven't been tongue-tied. Sorry.
A question I want to ask you.
Go ahead.
Do your viewers and listeners, are you assuming that they know what I've been up to in my life? Do they know All in the Family and Maud and the good times and the Jeffersons, et cetera, et cetera?
I will do an intro that lays that out, but I would love for you to share, especially at this moment in time where you've been so important in shaping the national understanding around politics, class, race, family. All of these things are now intersecting and changing. That was actually, you read my mind. That was going to be my next question, was to ask you about, as the creator of so many of those things that shaped the cultural understanding, the fabric of our culture. What do you think of that part of this moment right now? The Black Lives Matter, the racial injustice, the change that is happening, the change that needs to happen. I mean, you created the Jeffersons 40 years ago. I don't know how long ago it was, a long time ago. And you were breaking ground then. So what are your thoughts and reflections on this moment, Norman, given that experience?
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. We have so much more to do, and we need leadership. I bet I wrote 4, maybe 5 presidents over the years, and said, "You're a good deal younger than I am," especially Kennedy and so forth. But I need a father in the White House. I know from the bottom of my heart, I need to feel there's a father in the White House, and in his age doesn't matter. And we haven't had it. We don't have that leadership now, and we desperately need it. It's hard to specify what those needs are, but the feeling that there is leadership, that there is a father in the White House, is so important to this democracy.
Without that father in the White House, I feel like we're right now dependent upon America to have kind of the community take care of our child, and other fathers and grandfathers and uncles and aunts. And, you're kind of one of them, right? Like, you're an elder statesman. You're an elder in the best sense of the word. You were, honored at the Kennedy Center for your career. You've been honored so many times, but you've also seen all the presidents. You've seen all the candidates. As we look forward, and now Biden is the nominee, what do you think about the race, and what do you think about Biden and the next couple of months ahead?
I pray for that the next family living in the White House are the Bidens. It can't matter more, in my opinion. As much because it'll be the current inhabitant will be elsewhere
Hmm.
at Mar-a-Lago, and a reasonable leader will be in the White House.
Hmm. And you've been influential in politics for a long time. I hope they're calling you for your counsel on many things. Do you have a preference
I
on
haven't
who?
had a telephone call about counsel in several years.
That says something. I mean, I've been as critical of the Democrats lately as I've been in the Republicans. And if they're not calling you, they're wrong. But as they think about the vice presidential nominee, who would you like to see Biden pick and why, Norman?
Well, I'm crazy about Stacey
Hmm.
and Stacey Abrams. I just love the figure she cuts and the things she says and the way she says them. I love her, what I think to be her heart and soul. And I go to, I speak at some length about that because she's lacking in experience in the years you would hope a candidate has. But emotionally, you ask the question, my head goes there.
Hmm.
But there's, a Susan Rice is a reasonable job. What's her face? Why am I forgetting the name? But the first one that comes to mind for you too, I'm sure.
Kamala Harris is also out there from California. You've probably been around her long before folks saw her on the national radar, right?
Yes, and I respect and admire her enormously, despite the fact that I just forgot her name.
Yeah.
But Kamala Harris, certainly.
When I'm 98, I hope I remember my own name, Norman. So I think you get a pass on anything at this point.
Well, just when you're 98, just call me and I'll remind you.
you got. Are there other? You've seen all these leaders. You mentioned Stacey Abrams. Folks are hopeful about Pete Buttigieg and some of this newer generation of folks that are coming up. You're passing the torch in many ways. Are there other leaders or causes or even artists that give you hope about the next generation of leaders coming forward, Norman?
Yes, no, my general feeling is there's a surge of new leadership, youth coming forward. What's his name, the head of the AARP now?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I'll have to look it up. Yeah.
But very impressive. And I know him well. This is 98. And my feeling is there's a wealth of new young talent just emerging, and I want to throw up a window and say, take us. We're here for you. Take us.
They should all be putting you on speed dial for your counsel. I mean, especially Norman, because you understand, the feel of the American people, right? You understand that kind of gut, visceral read that the American people have on, culture and music and entertainment and politics, which has never been more intertwined with this guy in the White House than it is right now. But you always bring positivity. You continue to innovate, the iterations of All in the Family and how you're continuing to create and drive a conversation, in your 98th year, I think is inspiring to everyone.
Are you watching One Day at a Time?
I'm sorry, One Day at a Time. Thank you. There's
cool.
my memory going, but thank you. Can you talk for a minute about One Day at a Time and why that was so important to you?
Well, One Day at a Time, existed those 40 years ago you mentioned.
Yeah.
But we're in the fourth year of a Latino version of One Day at a Time with Rita Moreno and Justina Machado, and two very terrific showrunners, Gloria Calderon Collette and Mike Royce. I couldn't be prouder of the show, and it sickens me that we're not in production now
Hmm.
for reasons that involve us all.
Hmm. So the other question, sorry, go ahead, Norman.
I was just going to say, this is the most unusual time in my life.
Hmm.
Yeah, I often think I've worked all my life in an industry that relies on its imagination. All of this community relies on their individual imaginations. And none of us imagined what is occurring now in our culture.
Hmm. Hmm.
I will not be leaving the house today at all, and nobody will be coming over today. And that's for reasons of life and death reasons.
Right.
Unimaginable.
Well, I think that at least we'll be able to get you through a podcast and through Zoom and to project your wisdom. And I think anyone who's ever been around you, Norman, feels an aura of positivity. And one of the other questions I ask of all of our guests is pretty straightforward, but I think maybe can be helpful to folks, especially in times like this. Norman Lear, what makes you happy?
Yeah, reflexively, this conversation makes me happy. There are two little words that we don't pay enough attention to: over and next. When something is over, it is over, and we are on to next. But if there was a hammock in the middle between those two words, that would be the best definition I have of living in the moment. And this is my moment right now, and your moment. So I don't know I don't know an answer I feel more keenly than this is the moment.
I was going to ask you to share over and next because you gave me that advice once, and it might be the best advice I've ever gotten, especially in moments like this, when things can feel overwhelming for people, whether they're, movie producers or just trying to get by, driving a truck. Over and next has been, I keep going back to it, Norman, and I wanted a chance to tell you that today.
I love hearing that.
It's been, I can't tell you how many other people I've told. Norman Lear has advice, and he says, when you're thinking about it, over and next. It's like people probably are going to get me a T-shirt because I say it so often, and I attribute it to you because it served me well. It really has. It's helped me tremendously, and I think all of your guidance.
It's helped me tremendously too. I mean, it occurred to me because that's the way I was living.
Norman, are there any other lessons that you would share at this point after doing so much and living so long and having such an impact for folks that are maybe younger in their journey or going through a tough time? What's your counsel to them? Over and next, I think, is a perfectly insightful example of the Norman Lear wisdom. But is there any other counsel or advice you'd give folks who are in the struggle?
I love this. I think it was Goethe who said, well, there were two things. I don't remember who said this. Each man is my superior in that I may learn from him. Love that. Believe that. When I say that, I think about this moment in my life. After flying the missions, I volunteered to stay over in Europe and help ferry men and supplies across, Europe and the Middle East. And one ferrying mission, got us to Cairo, to Egypt. And I'm at the pyramids with my crew, all of us. And there's a guide that's going to take us into the pyramid to tell us how many slaves and how many bricks and all, what the pyramid, how it came about. But there was a fellow, an Egyptian, holding the reins to two camels for a quarter or something. You could get on a camel. I have your picture taken. But he spoke a little English. So I had the choice of going into the pyramids to hear the guide tell us how many bricks and slaves, etc., where the crew was going, or hang out with the guy holding the camels. And I held out, and I stayed with the guy holding the camel, and had the most fun. But this came out of it. He told me this in his words, and then later I read someplace many years later, and the same truth came out in these words. And that was, a man should have a garment with two pockets. In the first pocket should be a piece of paper on which is written, "I am but dust and ashes." In the second pocket, a piece of paper on which is written, "For me, the world was created." Mm. Love that. Mm. Love that. I don't think about it every morning, but so often I think when I open my eyes, if I didn't open my eyes, I wouldn't be here. If you didn't open your eyes this morning, all of this would not exist. Yeah. I love that.
I am so grateful for you sharing that, and to hear your laugh and to hear your wisdom. Norman, is there anything else you want to share? I have gifts for you, so we will end with gifts, but I want to just ask you.
Is that car a gift?
It's a 69 Camaro SS.
And is that one of the gifts?
For you, Norman, you got it. If anyone was going to have the car, it would be you, my friend.
I'm going to pick it up.
The car still needs a name. We've had an ongoing conversation about what to name the car, and we've come up empty so far.
I would say Gladys.
Gladys. I love that. I think that's perfect. If only because you picked it, it's perfect.
It looks like a Gladys. It has to have a name.
Okay, Norman, I have some quick gifts. I would normally give them to you in person. I will send them through a sanitizing process and have them delivered at some point. But first, I've got an Angry Americans gear for you, T-shirts, very comfortable, made by veterans in America. I've also got a bottle. You can mix it with your with anything you want, frankly, but especially your Bloody Mary. I don't know if you, at your age, you can do whatever you want. But it's an Uncle Nearest whiskey. The great Jeffrey Wright introduced us to this, and Nearest Green was the African American whiskey master who taught Jack Daniels how to make whiskey. There's a great backstory that if you don't know it, you'll love it. But we got a bottle of that coming your way. You are the master storyteller, so I got to give you a whiskey with stories. And then this is a part of our tradition on the show that's a little bit unique, but we normally do this in person. We have 3 colors of the Easter candy Peeps. And I ask every guest, if you had to pick a color to eat, yellow, blue, or pink, what color would you choose and why, Norman?
I would choose the blue, because blue is, I haven't thought about having a favorite color, but if I thinking about it now, it might be blue. Mm. But I would certainly rush to say blue among the 3 of those.
Well, if I had a favorite American, it would probably be you. Oh. I really mean it, man. I am so honored and grateful to have spent time with you, to have been taught by you, to have been around you, to have been around your team, family. I have to share this. I do.
You inspire and excite me the same way. I love everything about, I mean, does the current audience know you used to run the Iraq Veterans Organization?
They do. They do. Well, they do now. If the new folks now, they know. And you've been a tremendous supporter. You were a board member. You were an honoree. I mean, you know, it's important too, Norman, that when we first started out, a lot of the older vets said, why do you need another new veterans group? Why do you need it? And you were one of the first folks to step up at a time too. Now Hollywood is telling stories about veterans. It's become popular. But at that time, 2004, 2005, a lot of folks, in my experience, didn't know you had served in World War II. They weren't interested in really talking about veterans. Everything had been so politicized. And you you were a huge reason why they accepted us. You know, if they said, hey, this guy is coming because Norman Lear recommended him or Norman Lear supports him, you know, you opened a lot of doors for us and helped a lot of people in a way it wouldn't have happened otherwise.
I couldn't be prouder of anything.
Well,
and I love talking to you, and it's fair to say I love you.
Well, I love you, and America loves you, and our audience loves you, and we want to wish you a very, very happy birthday.
Thank
I
you.
think that the next president should make Norman Lear's birthday a national holiday, and everybody should get a '69 Camaro.
All right, if we could do that, I'm up for it.
It'll be a lot of fun and a jobs program at the same time, so it'll have a double bottom line, and everyone will be happy.
Love to your family on the other side of that garage.
My deepest thanks to you, the great and powerful Norman Lear. We love you, my friend. Happy birthday. Stay frosty.